Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:39 on HANradio.com and along the Hersam Acorn network. I'm Rob Adams in our Shelton studios as we have a story that has developed over the past couple of hours coming out of Darien and really a little more than that throughout the region. John Kovach and Josh Fisher have both joined me. We're going to get to Susan Schultz, the editor of the Darien Times, on the phone in just a moment. And John, this story has a certain amount of significance throughout the region.
It does, in that it may involve the 34-year-old unsolved murder of Darien Police Officer Kenneth Bateman, the only unsolved murder of a police officer in the history of the state of Connecticut.
Now, we should stress what we're talking about right now is purely person of interest. There's nothing more to it than that, Josh.
No, there's not, and this is something that John certainly covered when he was assistant editor of the Darien Times. I covered along with Susan, who's going to be joining us shortly, when I was editor of the Darien Times, and it happened on May 31st, 1981, that Officer Kenneth Bateman was shot around 3 o'clock in the morning, responding to a robbery at Duchess Restaurant on the Post Road. The Duchess that's still there.
Duchess is still there. It was a burglar. It was an alarm at the Duchess, right next to I-95.
Right.
It's right on the exit 13 on-ramp for I-95 South. And they've never figured out who did this.
So basically, to bring us up to speed on this entire story is the editor of the Darien Times, Susan Schultz. Susan, good afternoon.
Hi there. How's everybody doing?
We're good. Tell us what you know as of this hour and take us through how this story has developed, at least from the Darien perspective.
Well, it's still, the details are still, becoming clear, but it looks like Anthony Sabato, who's 57 of West Haven, along with another gentleman from Hartford, Miguel Dole Roman, were arrested yesterday on federal narcotics and firearm offenses. It looks like they attempted to both sell narcotics and to buy a firearm from an undercover police officer. So we got the press releases earlier today.
And these are both, let's just stress, these are unrelated to anything involving Officer Bateman. It's just that Sabato is the only person identified as a person of interest in this case, correct?
Correct. I mean, also, just what makes it interesting to us is that the Darien Police Department was part of, in addition to the West Haven Police Department and the FBI, part of the investigative bodies. So, there's no real explanation right now as to why the Darien Police were involved, being that, the arrests weren't in Darien and there really is no other tie to Darien. But, of course, right now the Darien Police declined comment.
Right, so but because of the past history here and because the Darien Police aren't normally involved in arrests that go on in West Haven unless there's a good reason, some assumptions are certainly being made here, but it could be a break possibly in this case, which, is, as John mentioned, I think, on a previous show today, the only unsolved police officer's murder in the state.
And it has stuck with the people involved. They still, correct Susan, they still have the softball game in Kenny Bateman's honor.
Yep.
They still do a blood drive in Kenny Bateman's honor. For years, somebody bought a full-page ad in, I believe it was the New Canaan Advertiser.
And the Darien Times.
And the Darien Times.
Yes.
Anonymously.
Yeah, every year, right around his death on May 31st, and he was 34 years old at the time, a 7-year veteran of the Darien Police Department. He also had served in the U.S. Navy, and he left behind his wife Barbara and his parents at the time, Kenneth Sr. and Gladys Bateman.
Now, just to be clear, this arrest of these two gentlemen, one of whom a person of interest in the murder of Kenny Bateman in 1981, was by a West Haven officer acting with the FBI's Safe Streets Task Force in New Haven. And that is comprised of personnel from the FBI, West Haven Police, New Haven Police, Milford Police, and the State Department of Corrections. So there's no Darien tie to this New Haven FBI task force. So you have to just extrapolate that there's some going to talk to Sabato about this
Right.
case?
I mean, it definitely, like I said, it definitely raises some questions, and hopefully those questions will be answered as the continuing investigation goes on and as the court proceedings go on. Obviously, as of today, as I said, they're declining comment, but I think, out of so many cases the Darien police handle, I would guess that solving this Bateman case is really one of the most important things for that department as a whole. I mean, it's just a very personal case for them, and I know that they continue to investigate it, and they never stop. So I'm sure it will be very important for them to get any more information on this case.
Susan, I was about to say that same thing, that the Darien Police Department has never stopped investigating. In fact, is recent, from what I could see in the archives, is 2013 in a story by David DeRoche, that DNA testing was still being used to kind of dig deeper into what happened that day back in 1983, or 81, excuse me.
Right. I mean, we generally have tried to update every year, because it is such an important story to see what advancements have been made and what's going on as far as the Darien Police Department. So, I mean, that's another aspect of our reporting, so it would be important to us, too, to find out as much as we can about this case. And I know that the defendants had court at 12:30, and there was supposed to be more information coming out of Bridgeport after that. I've tried to reach the attorney's office, but haven't been able to get them yet.
And to your point, Rob, and yours too, Susan, that certainly the police department has not forgotten about this. There's a display dedicated to Officer Bateman within the foyer, the lobby of the Darien Police Department. His badge, which I believe was number 15, was retired by the police department as well. And like John mentioned, then New Canaan, I think 10 or 12 years later, lost a police officer in the line of duty. So, and since 1982, those two towns, their two departments have come together for this softball game that they play every year.
Yes, they do.
So, and it's something certainly when May rolls around each year, we're not that we forget about it, but we're definitely always reminded of it. And the Darien Times has done a story on this in various different angles since then. Of course, the Times was founded in 1993. So, and if you're watching the video version of this, we're showing some of the images. We've been showing some of the images on the screen, some from the Advocate, Stanford Advocate, some from the Darien Police Department, and some from the Darien Times. Officer Bateman was an avid fisherman, and which I know is something close to John's heart, of course, as the Yankee fisherman. And so there's a lot of cool photos of him out there on the Sound, cigar in mouth, catching big fish.
Yeah, apparently he was not only a fisherman, but an avid outdoorsman, reading from that 2013 article, who loved shark hunting, skiing, and boating, and really a popular guy in the department. Just 34 at the time of his death. A $100,000 reward remains in place to anyone who provides information on the murder that leads to an arrest and conviction. And it should be mentioned, anyone to this day, because, again, what we're reporting is just person of interest, and not necessarily, the two sides don't necessarily meet on this story, and we want to stress that. But any information that you might have, you are still encouraged to call Darien Police, the Detective Division, at 203-662-5330 here on HANradio.com and the Hersam Acorn Network. John?
I'm looking as we talk at a story from 2014 by Dave DeRoche about the continuing investigation, and this is Darien Police Chief Dwayne Lavello, and they've periodically just put officers on the Bateman case and had them reinvestigate it. I'll read this paragraph directly. Lavello said that during his investigation, he was able to eliminate many suspects and scenarios, but evidence kept leading back to Sabato. The lack of physical evidence has prevented police from making an arrest. And that's what they face is, and at the time, they didn't have the forensics that we have now.
Susan, as we sit here, what's next?
Well, I'm going to keep hammering away at the Darien Police Department, as I am known to do, see what I can get them to provide. And I think a lot of it will depend on how court goes today, what kind of plea these guys, make, or what the next steps in that it will determine how or what kind of information I'm able to get going forward. But we will absolutely stay on this on both the the U.S. Attorney side and the Darien Police side to see what kind of information we can get in terms of what the connection is.
And you have to expect that the police are going to make sure that they, cross every T and dot every I, and are going to be very careful with this and close to the chest, because this is so important. And I know, Susan, you know this too. It's, a lot of the police officers obviously weren't on the force then in '81 who are there now, but this is just as important to them as any other case that has happened in Darien.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting that you say that is that, several, I can think of at least 2 or 3, I think, of the police on the force now had fathers or other relatives who were on the police force. So they may, in the Darien police force, so they may have known him in a different way. You know what I mean? I think it's just such a fraternity and a sorority of family that, and of course, regardless whether they knew him or not, but it's a testament to, their relationship and their dedication to each other that they continue this investigation for this long.
Right, it's a very tight-knit police force, as many and most of them are, and Chief Dwayne Lavella, who's been the chief there for now, I believe, over 10 years, and is, I think one of the good guys in police across the state, and was always a pleasure to cover. I know, John, you got to cover him also, and Susan has.
He was great, and the story that I referred to also quoted a lot Lieutenant Ron Bucell.
Oh, yeah.
Was just a great guy to deal with.
And Jerry Marin, who's the public information officer now, is just a really good guy too. And the police force does a really good job of working with the media and the Darien Times and getting information out. And Darien is, it's in an interesting situation too, because it's a rather well-off, wealthy town, but stuck between the city parts of Stamford and Norwalk with all these entrances and exits off 95.
Right.
So a good amount of crime ends up at least rolling through town, and as we saw here, ended up happening in Darien in 1981. It's not often that there's a murder in Darien, let alone obviously of a police officer. So this is just this huge rare thing in technically sleepy little Darien, but it's not that sleepy with I-95.
Right. Well, what I always try to say, sometimes we'll talk about in editorials, is with the location of Darien, a lot of times the police have to be commended for the crimes they prevent that none of us will really even know about, just because they are, investigating people quickly getting on and off 95.
Right.
I think a lot of times people have no idea about, how easy it is to commit crimes when you're this close to the highway, and what the Darien police do to prevent that.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just, people going through town, whether it's with a lot of drugs on them or something like that, or who are up to no good. And of course, also Darien is a prime target for people who are looking to, whether it's break into cars or break into homes or steal or rob from a bank too, because there's all those entrances onto the highway. It's kind of technically, if traffic's not bad, an easy place to get away from. A lot, and it's a small area, but it's a lot of space to cover for that police department, which I think does a rather good job.
Yeah, I agree.
Susan, I know you're going to stay on top of it for the Darien Times. You'll put it on the Darien Times website, tweeting, and all the various angles that we cover it from. And I know it's a busy day for you, so thanks so much for your time.
No problem. We'll definitely stay on this story. No question.
All right, Susan, thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right, Susan Schultz, the editor of the Darien Times, with us as we begin to wrap up our coverage. And again, we'll stay on top of this story. Follow the Darien Times, follow HAN Radio, both on Twitter. We're at Hersam Radio. They are at Darien Times on Twitter as well. So we will stay on top of this and certainly bring you more information as it breaks. But that'll do it for right now. We thank you for listening, and we thank you for watching on the Hersam Acorn Network. For John Kovach, Josh Fisher, Susan Schultz, I'm Rob Adams. We continue on HANradio.com.